Tonight, see how you do just being able to attempt to chant the verses from memory. I bet you can do it better than you can. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Deva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chavita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidyadharavitam Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. How did you do?
First one better than the second one.
Yeah. So the reason being, you actually use a different part of your brain when your eyes are not engaged. And I didn't believe this for a long time. Where I learned it was when I was studying conducting in graduate school. And the professor of my oral conducting class says you should memorize your scores, because when you do it from memory and you're just using your ears, it uses a different part of your brain. And first of all, you hear more, but it involves you emotionally better. And I memorized my final and did memorize another score until I lost my sight. Sight. And I had to memorize things. And then I realized he was absolutely right. Now, he knew all the science and stuff like that because that was his field. But I'm convinced at this point. And in Indian music, it is an oral tradition, especially singing. You call, respond, call, respond. That's part of it. So I encourage you from this point on to trust your ears. Trust your ears. Any thoughts on this?
What's the score you mentioned?
Score is the music on the page. It's the written music, which is a big part of Western music. Nothing wrong with that, but it hits us at a different place. We can do it from memory. They're not difficult. All right, Ganesh has volunteered to be our chanter this evening. I think we're on the 18th shloka. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, that's right.
All right, Ganesh, will you help us out?
Sure.
Can you all hear him?
देहेन्द्रिया मनोबुद्धिः प्रकृतिभ्यो विलक्षणं तद्वृत्तिः साक्षिणं विद्या तदात्मानं rajavatsada. One should understand that the Atman is always like the king, distinct from the mind, body, senses, and intellect, which constitute the matter, Prakriti, and it is the witness of their functions.
So the image he's using here, and again, all of these images only point, they do not define. But in the court of the king, he does nothing. He just sits there on his throne and he says, you do this and you do that, and you go here and you go there, and the general goes here and the chancellor does that. So he directs everything, but he does nothing. Now, the self doesn't really direct everything. A much better metaphor that we can use in modern times is electricity. Now, electricity is not light. Electricity is not motion. Electricity is not sound. But the light bulb by itself cannot glow. The fan by itself cannot turn. The stereo by itself cannot sing. But when we have this contact of the electricity with the instrument, electricity functioning through the light bulb becomes light. Electricity functioning through the fan becomes motion. Electricity functioning through the stereo becomes music. Electricity is not light. It is not motion. It is not music. But the equipment cannot function without it. Likewise, the equipment is inert. The eyes cannot see, the ear cannot hear, the mind cannot feel, the intellect cannot think of themselves. They are what we call jada, inert. But we have what Gita calls asparsha yoga, one of my favorite terms. The root is prichati, which means to touch. Asparsha, that's the participle, means untouched. Yoga means joined. Make up your mind. Is it untouched or is it joined? Yes. Swamiji used to call it the touch of the untouched. So because of I, the life principle itself, all the equipments function, without which they can't. But I do nothing. I is not an agent. There is a function in the subtle intellect. Shankara calls it karta, the doer, that attributes to the self the qualities of the not self. I walked to the bank today. I made myself some lunch. I sat in my chair this afternoon listening to a book. It seems like I, Jim, am doing that. But actually, the body did the walking. The hands did the cooking. My mind and intellect did the thinking. My ears did the listening to the book. And I witness it all. The doer is the force of the past, karma, and the qualities of mind, guna. The self is not a doer. So Shankara's metaphor of the king falls down a bit because the king actually says, you go here, you go there. Self doesn't do that. Any thoughts about this before we go on? The Master Jesus talked about this. He would say, I of myself do no thing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. He got the sense that he is not the agent. Now, Gita says guna and karma. You can also say Ishwara, the Lord is the agent. Doesn't matter how you frame it. The point is to let go of this identification that I am the doer. Now, once we understand that it's essentially the qualities of my mind and the force of the past that are doing the doing, this allows us to let ourselves off the hook in two very important ways. One of the things that afflicts some of us is regret for the past. Oh, why did I do blah, 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 blah. I should have done this. If I'd known differently, I would have done that. I could have done something so much different. I call it the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yoga says, no. You could do no differently than you did. There's no real you making those choices. You are ever the witness of the equipment, just responding to external circumstances, the force of the past, and the qualities of the mind. It also lets us off the hook about the future. Oh, Jim, I've been looking for a new job, and this company wants me, and that company wants me, and I don't know which one to take. What should I do? And yoga says, you're going to do what you're going to do. And don't look back. Make the choice, the best information that you have. Even more importantly, trust your intuition. And then step forward. Because in the end, our happiness, our peace of mind, our well-being is independent of external circumstances, if we know it. We've talked about vairagya, this detachment, letting go of my attachment to the enjoyments gained through the sense objects, letting go of my identification with a personal sense of self. This process is called vairagya. Drop it, let it go. Eventually, we learn how to tune up the mind. Find there's this release, this deep peace. The fact is my self-nature. And again, this is what Jesus meant when he said, my kingdom is not of this world. Doesn't mean we go to some place. Nirvana or nibbana, as the Buddhists say. It's not some place you go to. It literally means blown out. It means all my strivings cease. But let the body, mind, intellect, the equipment do as it will, according to its nature. Any thoughts on this?
Jim,
Yes.
this letting go. I have a hard time with that. We are tuned into hang on and to be attached and to want this and that, and you know, and there's a joy in wanting and working for it and getting it. I mean, there is some enjoyment in it.
The yoga never says that we don't have enjoyment through the world. But let's review what happens. We covered this very clearly in the first lesson in the art of meditation. So out of my unconscious comes a sense of restlessness, a sense of discontent. And from that restlessness, my mind posits, it puts forward an object of desire or a situation. First thing that happens is I determine what is dear to me. The technical term is priya. That's actually a common woman's name in India, priya. So I determine what's dear to me. Now, if we think, some people like coffee, some people don't. Some people like anchovies, some people can't stand them. Some people want a steak, some people go, oh. So what's true is what we desire differs from person to person. But that I desire, well, that's pretty common. And when I get what I want, what do? First of all, from the force of my past, because of familiarity, past experience, I determine the widget is dear to me, priya. Then I get proximate to that object of desire. I buy it, I marry it, I divorce it, I steal it, I earn it, I make it, I design it, I build it. That's called moda. Finally, when desire and object of desire become one, oh, yeah. Point of pleasure. That's called pramoda. For the mind in ignorance, which is what we're talking about, folks, I think it's the person, place, thing, or situation. What's really happened is for a moment, my mind is free from the discontent, the dissatisfaction of the longing itself. And if you look to your direct experience, I like to call it spiritual economics. It's 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of pleasure. Work, and you get it, and then, okay, I got it. Now what? And then the rat race keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. That's this world. The other story that illustrates this is in the West. I think it's one of the Grimm fairy tales. The story of the emperor's new clothes, the king's new clothes.
Mhm.
You know that story? Is that a Grimm fairy tale?
Not sure.
Anyway, the story is these charlatans show up in the capital city and they say, we are tailors, but we have a magical cloth. It is cloth that only wise people can see. And of course, nobody wants to admit that they're a fool. So they all say, oh yes, beautiful cloth, such beautiful texture. Oh, it's so luminous, the color is so good. They keep going around the capital. And finally, the king hears about it, calls these people to court. That's all fake. They're BSing. And the king, he doesn't want to admit he can't see the cloth, but only wise people can see. Oh, beautiful cloth. Must make me a suit of clothes out of this cloth. Whatever it costs, I will pay it. They get out their shears and they're cutting and measuring, and just a ruse. And then they bring the cloth out, the clothes out, and they put them on the king. The king goes in procession down the main street of the capital city. Now, all the people in the city, they don't want to admit they can't see it. Oh, such gorgeous cloth. Oh, what beauty. Oh, she looks so regal in that. Except there's a child who hasn't been privy to all this talk. And he looks and he turns. He says, Mommy, the king is stark naked. So what all the people in the world do is we go to cocktail parties and how was your trip to Switzerland this year? Oh, well, I'm going to visit here. I bought a brand new house. And oh, do you like my new jewelry? And stuff like that. And we tell one another this stuff is making us so happy. But if people are really honest with themselves, what was Buddha's first noble truth? Anybody remember?
Life is suffering.
Dukkha Satya, the truth of suffering. Maybe that's not true for you. Maybe you're the one exception. Is this making sense, Foz?
It makes sense that that process of getting there and realizing that there's nothing, that nothingness. So we all choose that path of getting to that.
No, we don't all choose it. Yogis don't choose that path.
No, by that I mean that one is a doctor, one is an architect, another one is a lawyer. That's that path to get there. So that
Yes.
path is the choice.
Yes and no. You may start down that path, but at some point, when you see the fundamental emptiness of it, then you can choose to be a yogi and see if there's something else that's more real. Does that mean you give up being a doctor or lawyer? You might. Or you might say, well, I got to do something in this world because I got to pay the rent because I got kids. I have to fulfill my responsibilities. So I'm going to live a life of service. But it's not about ambition. It's not about getting. It's not about acquiring. It's not about winning anymore. I tell you, go ahead.
I get that.
I'll tell you another true story. Many of you know, used to be a professional musician. One of my great musical heroes was Luciano Pavarotti. Anybody ever heard recordings of him or heard him sing?
Yes.
Gorgeous voice. And he was just like what you said. He had ambition. He wanted to be the greatest tenor in the world. And he made it. And after he got to that level, he went into a deep depression. Because guess what? It wasn't better, it was just different. His performances started to decline in quality and he was phoning it in. What's going on with Luciano? And he was flying into the Milan airport in the winter, and there was ice on the runway. And the plane skidded on the runway and it crashed. It actually split in two. People died. And all of a sudden, he was there and he was literally helping people go down the slides to get off the plane. And it was a life-changing event for him because he saw how precious life is. He almost died. But his whole approach to his career changed after that point. He began to get involved in music education. He continued to perform. And he knew how lucky he was that he got to do that. One of the things he did was set up the three tenors. Any of you go hear the three tenors, Domenico Pavarotti and Jose Carreras? You might have heard those. Did you ever hear the three tenors?
I haven't.
But you knew about it.
I know all three of them,
Yeah.
but I've never heard him sing
You
together.
know what that was really about? Jose Carreras got leukemia. And this was an athlete. He was a soccer player before he went into singing. Real stud. And he went through the chemotherapy and the radiation, and he recovered. But he was never, ever after that strong enough to sing an entire operatic role. And he was broke. So the three tenors concerts were a way for Jose Carreras to continue to work. And he didn't have to sing a whole role. He didn't have to sing a whole aria anymore. Just some beautiful phrase. Oh, yay! And Domingo and Pavarotti would cover it. People don't know that. It was an act of service for this man. And he set up these competitions and these educational things, and it was all about service. His whole attitude in life changed because of that one event. Isn't that an incredible story?
Mm-hmm.
Incredible story. And what yoga will say, this is what's covered so much in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. If we live life selfishly, it's all about me, it's all about my ambitions, my goals, and the money I'm going to make and how I'm going to impress people, knock yourself out. But you will probably be an unhappy person because it never solves the problem of what really is going on in the human heart. I don't know if that's useful.
It is.
All right, next verse, please.
व्याप्रत्येष्वन्द्रियेष्वात्मा व्यापारी वा विकेनिनाम् व्यापारी वा विवेकिनां दृश्यते भ्रेषु धावत्सु धावन्निव यथा शशि. The moon appears to be running when the clouds move in the sky. Likewise, to the non-discriminating person, the Atman appears to be active when it is observed through the function of the sense organs.
Yes, so what he's, again, another one of his, each one of these verses has an image. And the idea here is it's an evening where there's a full moon, but there's clouds in the sky and there's a high level wind. So you look up and the clouds are passing in front of the moon and it looks like the moon is moving. It's an optical illusion. What I like is BART trains at MacArthur Station. So you got 2 trains coming in one direction, 2 trains the other direction. If you've ever taken BART at MacArthur Station. So you got 2 cars and they happen to be starting up at the same time, and then one moves ahead and then the other one moves ahead. And you're looking like, oh, that train's moving backwards now. No, it's not moving backwards. My train's moving faster. Oh, we're moving backwards. That train's going ahead. No, optical illusion. So Shankara's example, the moon is sthita. It's still in the sky. Moving clouds give the appearance. Likewise, yourself is achalam. Chalchalati means to move around. Achalam means not moving. But the body moves, the prana goes up and down, the feelings change, the thoughts change. Again, in the subtle intellect, I attribute to the self the changes in the equipment. And when those changes appear to happen, then I get frightened and I want to secure or protect myself. And I start to get into trouble. I was talking with someone some time ago. They got a promotion and a raise at work. And I was talking on the phone with them. They got involved in a relationship, and they thought they were doing fine, but they weren't putting the time in. They were working remotely. And all of a sudden, the manager says, "We're putting you on a PIP, Is that the right term? Do you know that one?
I think I've heard you talk about it before.
Personal improvement program, performance improvement program.
Yeah.
That's the step they do just before they can you. And then, of course, first thing, what does ego do? They are wrong and bad. Talked her off the cliff, and then all of a sudden, okay, yeah, I have been screwing off. But the yogi drops any notion of self. Neither the good review nor the pip is about me. Chidananda Rupaham. I am of the form of bliss consciousness. Dropping that personal sense of self. Any thoughts on this and the practice that's implied? If I think I'm a person, then the mind will say, I either need to fix the world or I need to fix me, and especially if it's about fixing me because I'm not okay. Or I think I'm okay, but if you don't think I'm okay, then I got to slap you around so that you threaten my idea of self. All of that goes away for the yogi if we can drop that personal sense of self. Let it go. Now, the psychotherapist, you go to the psychotherapist and you've had an event in your life and your mind comes to the conclusion, I'm a terrible person because of this, that, and the other thing. Many psychotherapists will then invite you to reframe the story. Well, actually, that's maybe not what happened. Maybe it was X, Y, and Z, and they were just reacting from their past, and you were okay. And temporarily, that may be self-soothing, but it never lasts. It never lasts. It never lasts. Yoga says, don't think the moon is running when the clouds are moving in the opposite direction. Don't think yourself is bad or good when the mind and the circumstances are moving. Get out. Stay identified with witnessing consciousness. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Number
20.
Atma chaitanyamashritya dehendriyamanodhyah swakriyartheshu vartante suryalokam yatha janaha. Depending upon the Atman, which is of the nature of consciousness, the body, senses, mind, and intellect engage themselves in their respective activities, just as men work depending upon the light of the sun.
Yes. So again, he's using a practical worldly element. In cultures before electric light, activity was around the cycle of the day. So when the sun came up, there was light, people started to work. When darkness came, And you might build a fire in the middle of the village for a while, and then people go to sleep. Work stops. So Mike was talking about getting up at 5 o'clock. What I love is just before sunrise, at least here, because I'm so close to the park, it'll be very quiet, and then the birds start. Does that happen where you live too?
Absolutely.
So when the day starts, the animals start to sing. So also, like the sun, in fact, one of the oldest names for God in Hinduism is Surya. Surya means the sun, the solar deity. So the self is like the sun. And because of the prakasha, the light of consciousness, everything moves. Everything. Now, here's a very interesting point on this. So, here in Oakland, we have what's known as light pollution in the evening. So if you go out at night, because there's a lot of city light, you look up, really can't see much of the stars and stuff. You know what I mean? It's very different than when you're out in the country, like when you were out in Glacier National Park.
Exactly.
We have light pollution. So if it is an overcast evening, you may not notice it if there are high clouds. You know, you just may not even notice it. But in the daytime, today it was overcast this morning. Then the sun came out later. Wasn't that funny language? The sun came out. Did the sun come out or did the clouds move? Isn't that interesting? But were any of you up and outside this morning? I went to the bank this morning and it was overcast.
I was above the clouds.
You were fine.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, how do I know that the orb of the sun is not visible? It is literally by the light of the sun that I can see that the orb of the sun is not visible. At night, when it's overcast, I may not notice it. So very carefully. 3 of the words that we frequently use to indicate the self are Satchit Ananda, pure existence, awareness, and bliss absolute. Always, my existence is never in doubt. Always, I am aware. But the funny thing about the Ananda, just like the clouds can temporarily obscure the orb of the sun, so also when the mind is covered in ignorance and my mind is extroverted into the tyranny of longing, I do not experience bliss. My mind is not blissful. Yet the self is there. Did you have a bad day today? Oh, yes, I had a terrible day today. Did you know that you had a terrible day? Oh, of course I did. I wouldn't be telling you about it otherwise. Do you exist? Yes, I exist. What was your existence like today? It sucked. I am, I shine. Oh, bliss. So when the sky is overcast like it was this morning, did it touch the sun at all? 93 million miles away, what did the sun think about the overcast clouds? No relationship to it at all. But for example, in the plane, were you above the clouds
Yes.
and you could look down and see the clouds?
Yes.
Yeah. So even when my mind is upset, I am, I shine. But it's like an overcast day. My mind does not feel happy. Just as the sun shining on the ocean becomes the cause of evaporation, which eventually shows up as the clouds. So also the light of awareness illumines the mind. And if that mind is under the tyranny of self-obsession, selfishness, self-examination, how am I doing? Am I okay? And craving, I want this, I want that, or aversion, I don't want that, and I don't want this. That becomes like the clouds. Self is never really obscured, but in the mind, I don't feel happy. Just like around 1, 2 o'clock today, the clouds burnt off. And the light of the sun was available. So also, let go, let go, let go. Then the clouds of my ignorance, my craving melt away. Beautiful image. Did you have a question? Nope.
Two things you mentioned. One was the craving. The other one was you mentioned. I missed the word. You said, I don't want this.
Ignorance. My spiritual ignorance manifests in two ways. The first is the non-apprehension of my true nature, meaning I do not know that I am witnessing consciousness. I do not know that my nature is unending happiness. The second thing is a projecting power. The mind then projects the ego sense. I think I'm Jim or Foz. And it projects a world of name and form, and the mind is convinced that's where the happiness is. And then I start to struggle. I'm under the tyranny of craving. The ego always says, resolve the struggle of ego, get more money, get a bigger house, get more prestige, fulfill all my ambitions, etc. That's what's going to make me happy. And yoga says, you can try that. And there may be a little bit of juice, if you're lucky, literally if you have the merits of the past, but it's always very temporary. And we're continually dissatisfied. And even when we get what we want, it leaves an impression, I want to do it again, only more. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
All right.
The word that I was looking for was when you mentioned not wanting this, I don't want that.
Aversion?
Aversion.
Aversion. Okay.
Do you know what that means in English?
Now I know.
Aversion means I dislike it. I don't want it.
Thanks.
Alexa, define aversion.
Aversion is usually defined as a strong feeling of dislike, opposition, repugnance, or antipathy, usually followed by two. For more, ask me to give you more definitions for aversion.
Does that help?
Yes.
Good word.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, next verse.
Dehendriyagunan karman. Dehendriyagunan karma. Dehendriyagunan karman. Yamale Satchidatmani Abhyasthyantya Vivekena Gagane Nilatadivat. Fools, because they lack in their powers of discrimination, superimpose on the self of the nature of absolute existence, knowledge, Satchit, all the varied functions of the body and the senses, just as they attribute blue color and light to the sky.
So Gagana, the sky. So the foolish person goes out and says, oh, I hope you're not flying in an airplane. You might hit the bowl of the sky. Very dangerous. Is the sky blue? Did someone paint the sky blue? It's an optical illusion. It's light passing through vapor in the atmosphere. I attribute to the clear atmosphere. I superimpose the color blue. All sorts of optical illusions. Never go on a train. If you look down the tracks, they meet in the distance. You'll crash if you get on a train. Oh, I was sitting on the beach out in Ocean Beach, and it was so sad. I saw a container ship go out and then fall off the edge of the world. There at the edge of the horizon, that's the edge of the world. The ship fell off. I saw it go down. Optical illusion. Seen, but not real. So we're back to what is it that happens in my mind? The technical term is called adhyasa, superimposition. Have we talked about that in this class yet?
Yeah.
Let's review it. When I superimpose some idea onto something. What was the one I did just recently? Well, you get, in the old-timey days, the one I use a lot is, you guys may be old enough. The old-timey days, if you bounced a check, you got the little small envelope rather than the number 10 envelope. You guys probably never bounced checks. I can remember I was in the ashram. No, I was soon after that, when I was living on Masonic. Came home, got my mail. There was a small little envelope with the window. They usually like pink or green, you know. Oh, F. You know, because I was terrible at arithmetic and balancing my checkbook. Thank God for online banking. It just doesn't happen anymore. So I said, I bounced a check. I opened the envelope and I made a mistake on my last deposit and I had $5 more in my account than I thought. Where did the bounced check go? It was never really there. Superimposed. So what Shankara is saying here, my problem is I superimpose upon myself in my mind. That's where the superimposition happens. The qualities of the not self unto the self. And the bija vasana, the seed attachment, the seed superimposition is I'm the body. It's the most difficult one to break. But actually, the body is an object of awareness. I know the body. Take a deep breath. You know the breath in the body in the same way you do the sound of the little putt-putt going by. It's objective knowledge. And it's the same with energy. It's the same with feelings. It's the same with thoughts. It's the same even with the ego sense. They are objects of awareness. But you are something real. You are not a superimposition. How do you know you are you? You do not see, hear, taste, touch, or smell yourself. You don't emote yourself. You don't think yourself. Yet you do not cease to exist ever. You do not doubt your existence ever. Unless you're a Shunyavadan, we call them. Followers of Sunga, scholiasts of the void. Ultimate reality is void, there's nothing. Okay. Have you experienced it? Yes, I know I don't exist. So you had the experience that you disappeared. Oh, yes. And to whom did that occur? Does it make sense? Do I have unwashed coffee mugs in the sink right now?
No,
Are you in the kitchen?
no. I just know you're very good at taking care of the dishes all the time.
What you know for sure is you do not know.
I've got hunches though.
You got hunches, but you have no direct knowledge.
Correct.
But you have not seen it.
Correct.
So if you disappear, how would you know you were gone? What would be there to know it? Is there consciousness one that's aware of consciousness two coming and going? So you cannot negate self-evidence, self-luminosity. You might theoretically, but not experientially. Now, this self is
Can I ask a quick question? on that?
sure.
So, but your body is Maya. So if you're in a state of deep consciousness, let's say, and you realize that your body doesn't really exist, could you somehow transcend it? Or you're saying it's not possible?
Well, what's transcending what?
Well, I'm putting out a possibility.
Okay, let's follow that logically.
So I'm just
So
imagining.
can you see the table?
Yes.
Have you transcended the table?
Well, I could see myself in a state where I would see the molecules of the table and not the table.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're not talking about having a subtle enough mind to see the molecules. Simple question, are you a table?
Am I a table?
Yeah,
No, I'm not a table.
yeah. So you have, your nature is already transcendent. You are not a table.
Correct.
Okay. Are you a fan?
Not in this lifetime.
No. Are you the little girl that had the 4-foot tall body? What happened to her?
She's still there.
Gone. She's gone. She went down the toilet, down the drain. Literally.
Well, the body, but
Yes, that's my point.
okay.
Now, where it gets interesting, when you dream, in the dream, you have a dream body. And from that dream body, there's a locus of perception. You peep out at a dream world from that dream body. And you have a dream ego. You are identified with the dream body. It seems just as real as being identified with the physical body here. But when you wake up, were you in the dream or was the dream in you? I'm not saying it wasn't a very vivid experience. But the dream body and the dream ego that was identified with it were just figments of imagination.
But isn't this reality similar in that it's Maya?
Exactly. That's my point.
That's my point too.
But you are already transcendent.
Right.
You don't become transcendent.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You never have been the body.
Correct.
My problem is I just think I'm my body, just like in the dream.
Exactly.
The only problem is I think I'm the dreamer. That's not real. There is no other bondage than the deeply rooted conviction that I'm bound, meaning I think I'm my body. There is no other liberation than the deeply rooted conviction, not that I'm a realized person, but that I am consciousness, not indirect knowledge, because I read it in a book or I heard it from a teacher. My own direct experience, meaning I've purified the mind enough so that I can see the beginning and the end of thought in that space between the thoughts, with the attentive faculty introverted. Who are you? Can you find a Pamela in there? Nope. Now, you never were Pamela.
Correct.
So what's transcending what?
I think we are in agreement.
Okay.
I'm lost.
It's all right. Put it on the shelf.
The transcendent, how do you?
There's nothing to transcend, is the point. In the end, what we do is we realize that I never was bound in the first place. Another image I like to use, if you go to a stage show in Las Vegas with a friend, and there's a stage hypnotist. The friend goes up on the stage and he gets hypnotized into thinking he's a chicken. Runs around the stage going, "Quack, quack, quack, quack." Everybody's laughing. Then the hypnotist goes, I wakes up. He comes down. He says to you, my gosh, that was so weird. I was convinced I was a chicken. Now, was he ever a chicken?
Yeah.
No. But it seemed very real to him when he was hypnotized. Spiritual ignorance is deep hypnotism. Now, there used to be this another Persian fellow from Iran. His name was Hamid. He used to sit right there. He really tuned up, and everything would disappear for him. And he said one night, Jim, you hypnotized us. And I said, Hamid, no, I de-hypnotized you. That's the job of the teacher. All right. One more.
Ajnanan manasopadhe kartrutvadini chatmani kalpyante ambugate chandre chalanadi yatham bhasah. Due to ignorance, the tremblings that belong to the water are attributed to the reflected moon dancing on it. Likewise, the agency of actions and so on are delusively understood as the nature of the self, Atman.
So here is a reference to one of Shankara's most famous images. So he was a Malayali from Kerala, and it's very hot. They have 3 seasons there, hot, hotter, and hottest. And in the Nambudri houses, that was his caste. He was a Nambudri. They have these beautiful porticos, and women would come down during the day, and they would get these great big huge jars, about 4 feet tall, and with potable water, and they'd bring them back up to the compound. And I've always imagined Shankara would be teaching class in the evenings when it was cool. So you have to imagine he's there on the porch. There's half a dozen jars of water. There's a full moon. And he says, look inside the jars. There are 6 moons, one in each one of the jars. And he says, what? Oh, the moon is broken. So what we have is chit chaya. Chaya means a reflection or a shadow. So we have the reflection of consciousness caught in the web of thoughts, not consciousness itself. Just like there's no real moon in the jar. The moon is much too big to fit inside a jar. So it seems like I, Jim, am an individual conscious being. Just like when the water ripples, it seems like the moon ripples. When my mind ripples, it seems like I am disturbed. If my mind gets pacified, oh, thank God, I am okay now. Don't trigger me. It's the word that everybody's using now. Well, it triggered me. That was a microaggression. It triggered me. Don't ever work. You can't ever find peace by trying to control your environment. So what we have to see is when the environment is conducive, the mind is pacified. When the environment is not conducive, the mind squawks. Don't pay a lot of attention to it. Take on Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of the witness. Just watch it. And if you have developed the practice of some extensive meditation, so like Mike, you were saying you're sitting for 40 minutes in the morning, that's pretty good. How long are you sitting in the morning?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. You need to extend it minimum 20 minutes. You won't get the benefits of it. How about you, Dan?
45.
How about you, Pamela?
1 hour.
Good for you. So those of you who are getting an extended time meditation, your mind may throw up some sort of attachment or issue or something. But if you stay in meditation, what happens to it?
What?
Yeah.
And then it comes back.
Another one over, yeah, here it comes back.
But they're impermanent. They're impermanent. They're not fundamentally real. Feeling's just a feeling. Thought's just a thought. Story's just a story. And you are untouched. Swamiji used to say the way to heal the mind is to get out of the mind. Stay identified with that untouched witness. You be the moon in the sky, not the reflected moon, the Chandra Chaya. Reflected moon in the jar of the water. All right, what verse are we on for next week? We've got to quit here.
22.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you, Ganesh, for helping us out tonight.